Good morning. Let me start with asking this question. How many people remember that famous ad from Maruti Suzuki where this guy is out there trying to buy that cruise liner and then they say, like, at the end, he says, kitna deti hai? Right? Show of hands. Correct? Somewhere, if you look at Agentic AI, there's a lot about that ad, if you will. There's a lot of anxiety. Clients are asking, okay, what's the return on investment? How real is this? And when we were talking about, this session, when we were invited to speak out here, we asked ourselves that, okay, what do we really want to take back to the audience out here? And that's what you see this topic is all about. And we are here with Shubhro, who is our global lead in the AI and agentic space. And the idea is to bust some of those myths, help you understand what's really happening out there, what we as Genpact are bringing to the table. But I'll not take more time from out here, and I'll hand it over to Shubhro to walk down that thought leadership.
Thank you, Dinesh. Garry Kasparov had a big role to play where I am today. Why is that? May 97, I was in my beautiful engineering college thinking and discussing what kids discuss at that age, is when the news broke that Deep Blue just defeated Garry Kasparov. And it was not a one-off game, it was a classic tournament which got won. I mean, for me, that was the day when AI became real for me, and that is one where you truly believe the potential. If anybody had a doubt about the potential of AI, that is the penny drop moment for all of us. Well, as world progressed, I moved from chess. I was a great chess enthusiast, average chess player, but moved on to the game of Go. If any of you have not played the game of Go, I would recommend you go and try it. It's a beautiful game which uses a lot of logic and a lot of intuition. A classical game of chess uses maybe 35 odd moves on a single square. This moves on 200 odd moves at any point of time. And in 2016, it was widely believed that it's a game of intuition. And when a computer can defeat a human being, is at least a decade away. Lee Sedol, the greatest Go player maybe ever existed in the world, was defeated by AlphaGo in 2016. Now, the interesting moment there was a classic. I would recommend all of you to go back and look at the game, just look at what it's all about. But the beauty of this is one of the moves which AlphaGo played in that was classically understood as a wrong move to play in the entire history of game of Go. And the reason it happened was the statistical probability of playing that move was so low that almost no human could ever conceptualize that. But because it has trained the way it has trained, it won the game. Obviously, it won the tournament plan and square. My next penny drop moment was 30th November 2022. As you can remember, this is, for the rest I remember the months. This one I remember the date because it was my marriage anniversary. Maybe it was the last time when I had a quiet evening with my wife without thinking about AI. That's when ChatGPT was launched. Obviously, world changed. And obviously my life and my professional, everything else focused in that direction. And since then, GPT-4 as well, the bar exam, medical exams, whatever you may talk about. From the journey from May 97 to roughly beginning of this year is 28 odd years, roughly 1,500 weeks. What has happened in the first 1,890 hours in this year is significantly more than that. Significantly, just understand, one is number of weeks, one is number of hours. All of these, but enterprise spend is in billions. It's enterprise spend, it's not R&D spend, government. Enterprise spend is in billions. 60% of S&P 500 mention this as part of their earnings. Nobel Prizes for physics and chemistry went into areas and researches into that. Most importantly, I think the last one might impact a bunch of us. This number is when Claude Cowork launched. This was the entire disruption. This number, I believe, is severely much more lesser than what it needs to be. It's much higher from that perspective. So this is the pace of change. As you could see, the last 30-odd years to what we have seen the first 3 months, it's a dramatic, dramatic acceleration. We heard all of us talk about, in all the mornings, all of us talked about this in some way or the other. But there is a flip side, right? And what we did was, we did a primary survey at Genpact of around 500 top leaders, autonomy by design, and looked at where are the enterprises. While all the previous 2 slides are a reality, this slide is also the reality. What is it saying? It's saying only 12% of enterprises are in the leaders. They're using Agentic AI very effectively. The big fat bucket of 47% are still using it as a chatbot. Now you will wonder why MIT study will say only 5% enterprises. If you're using it as a chatbot, you will only get that kind of value. So therefore, the question is, AI is real, AI is here, AI has changed the world. This year, forget about the last 30 years, this year it has changed the world, personally impacted all of us. But the reason we are not able to leverage is one at the center and the back, and only 12%. So therefore, today's conversation is about what do we do to turn the needle on that. 4 major things. I mean, there are many things you can do. A bunch of them were covered by the previous speakers, but there are 4 things to make it really simplified for you. First one, there is no tool out there. There is no single agent. There is no tool. It is a symphony of agents which is required with value at the center to make it happen. When I talk about it is, remember, it's an agentic system. It is not an agentic tool. It is definitely not an LLM model. It has to be the human-machine system which can create and drive the value for all of us. The second one, universal AI practitioners. All of you today here are using AI. But that's not enough. A bunch of us, I suspect the ratio at this previous page, are using AI like a chatbot to be fast at a work, like I could quickly calculate how many hours were there in this year, that kind of stuff. But truly using to drive value, like, I mean, we, at Genpact, we launched the Agentic AP suite last year, and the learnings from there was you have to transform your role from a consumer to an actual AI practitioner, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And that's what's the requirement for all GCCs as well. Last mile knowledge. I mean, if I do a show of hands, how many people here have listened to this term called last mile knowledge? I think it will be 100% one. But let's go beyond the English. The problem with this world today is, agentic AI, everyone is talking about English. So last mile is a very simple, I'll bring it to life a very simple example. If you get an invoice in Europe which is marked as gas, you will pay it very quickly because it indicates a natural gas. If you don't pay it, the factories will shut down. If you get an invoice in US which is marked as gas, you would think it's a gasoline and a freight invoice. I'll play it at its own time. That is what last mile is about. And there are millions of such nuances in every process which GCC have expertise to sitting there. And that is what has been incorporated in the systems we feel is successful about. Now, given what's happening in the Middle East, I think you should pay both the invoices very quickly at the same time. But that's a good one. And finally, when I was hearing the conversations in the morning, we were all talking about governance, but the moment the word governance came in, body language went down, energy levels sapped up, 20 approvals, 30 people to sign off. That's fine. That governance has to transform into governance with the speed of AI. So governance has to be on responsible AI. It has to be driving the value together. It cannot be a roadblock. If you get these 4, that from our experiences of getting up the AP business with Agentic last year, doing the whole primary survey we talked about, essentially if you focus on these 4 things, you will move back from that 46% to 12%. This is an interesting chart to talk about the same thing which I did say, but the only thing I would say here is what is important is not the software technology, not the operations. So we hear of system of intelligence, system of record. There is a system of operations which is critical, which is very, very critical. And that's why it's a human plus machine combination. If you combine these two, the center of Venn diagram is where 12% people are sitting. And that's the way we need to think of our roles, of our businesses, as we go through this journey together. What's happening as a result is not just technology which is getting changed. There is change which is very, very important across many dimensions. Some of us think that if we change the product, if we change the software, if we change the people, it will all work. It doesn't. Here are the dimensions which I talked about of change. Human beings have to move away from just being processors to be expert oversights and more being exception managers. In Genpact, we have completely changed our roles. Frontline managers have become exception managers. Prompt analysts being embedded deep into our operations, right? It's a complete reimagination of what roles we believe would work. Process and compliance is the skill profile. Process, what is the process knowledge, domain knowledge? That needs to change from techno-functional, focus on ethical, completely different focus in terms of what we really want to do. FT and productivity are favorite terms, right? That has dramatically changed. I think it's severely outdated today. We have to talk about outcomes, value, and impact. That's essentially the difference. The moment you talk about how many hours you have saved, you're getting nothing on the P&L. The moment we start talking about what is the impact we are driving and moving outcome we are driving, that's when you start getting business cases. And that's where you start moving to the 12% number which we just talked about. Processes become linear to collaboratively, and governance very critical. As I said, I do think when people think about governance, there's a syncing of body language, cannot be like that. Governance has to, from SLA adherence to responsible AI. That is the entire gamut of change we need to go through. Now, if we do all of this, the value can be disproportionate. I mean, this is an example of one of our clients where it made an acquisition. The business went up by 1.5x, revenue went up by 1.5x because they made an acquisition. But the number of people involved in, let's say, processing their back office invoices went down by 70%. Imagine this. 150% increase, 70% reduction of human work involved in that. All done in the last 2 years. Not real, not just a theory, not just hype, but actual real outcomes which we can drive. But the thing is that a traditional GCC or a process story ends at the first 2 columns. There is an amazing improvement, which is the outcomes, which is what are the duplicates you're stopping, right? What is the whole discounts you're stopping? That's when you move away from FTs to outcomes. Yeah, I mean, I can go on and talk about AI, but in reality, I am not the expert because intellectually Mr. Jain is the expert because he's the only one amongst the both of us who has AI in his name. So I will let Dinesh come and talk about us for the last insight.
Sure, thanks, Shubhro. So just that this curve, probably you may have seen different versions of this curve. The point that we're making is that depending on where you are in your GCC journey, we start with cost arbitrage, setting up the foundation, building our service capability, and then there's a lot of conversation around innovation hub. The question is, you have set a new cost benchmark within your organization. How are you going to sustain it? You got to move up the value curve. And you are in the right place at the right time because you obviously have the cost advantage, though there are inflationary trends from a talent standpoint. You have the partner ecosystem in your backyard. You have the capabilities that are required to drive the movement or going up the value curve. The question you have to ask yourself, and some of the other panelists were also talking about that, is, are you really leading in moving from agentic operations to creating an agentic enterprise hub? I would completely agree with some of the participants here who said GCC need to be renamed. It should be probably called Global Agentic Enterprise Hub because this is the time, this is the opportunity. But obviously you will have to go from what it says like more of experimental technology, which is required to move more towards the operational reality. So this is, I'll leave you with one very quick example here, which was a very real life example. One of the American energy technology company, we did some agentic work for them. We loaded around 2 years of invoices in mere 12 weeks into those models, the LLM models. And within 3 to 6 months, there were 62 invoices, duplicate invoices were found, valued up to $16.9 million. One invoice alone was $7.9 million. I told this story to one of the GCC heads in some similar forum. He got so excited, next day he sent an email to his CFO. Now, just to give you a context, this GCC is around 200, 250, and only technology. He sends a message to his CFO, marking us a copy, saying that I'm hearing this interesting stuff. On the process side, there's so much to do. We get an immediate reply from the CFO, who's a very busy man. It's a mid-sized company, and now we are having that conversation. So process and technology coexist when you want to go up the agentic curve. And before I end, I'll just leave you with one thought out here. This is something that our chief strategy officer said, We probably are the last set of managers who will manage human employees. And we will be the first set of managers who will manage human and agents. Thank you.
Thank you very much.